But today, a long-awaited Infinite Jest update. So I've been absolutely grinding this book, and finally at about the halfway point. I'm on page 417. I'm calling this a halfway point because this is all just footnotes and whatnot. So pretty far into it, and then I feel like I'm finally getting into the juicy bits. I've been really, I've actually been enjoying it very much, and I've been reading that, obviously reading the crap out of it. Um, I've been going back and forth between reading that and then also reading on my Kindle Scribe, just because like the ability to annotate on this just works so well, and this is just easier for me to take at work and not be like when I'm working carrying like a big old book. I could slip this in my bag and be good to go. But I wrote down all my talking points in my notebook, so suppose we'll get into it. So, firstly, I just want to say this book is probably the most commitment I've had to put into reading anything, based on the fact that like you can't really just read it like passively. You kind of have to be very involved and engaged while you're reading it, solely based on one, the amount of different subplots like going on throughout the book that are now at this point coming together and kind of showing the connections that they have. But up until now, it was kind of like just like I think I said like in my last video, just seemingly random subplots and characters and just so many things kind of happening that you're kind of confused as to why you're reading about these like certain characters. But now that's all coming together, it's just starting to make sense and click. And then also because there's so many footnotes, you keep having to, like as you're reading, you kind of have to flip back. And then like some of these like footnotes are like 3 pages long as well, and like the text is smaller than like a regular page of text. So that's another reason why I also like reading it on my Kindle Scribe, just because you don't have to like. It's kind of hard to honestly like flip back and kind of get to like find the footnote number. And so on the Kindle Scribe, you can just click it and it pops up. I think there's a reason why it takes so long for the book to kind of get going, and for so much of it being kind of feel like it's running on, and kind of like David Foster Wallace is kind of like poking you a little bit, like trying to get you to stop reading it. That's what it feels like. I'll get into why I think that in a little bit, but before I kind of want to get into like the themes of it, I did want to talk about how David Foster Wallace was like pretty ahead of his time in regards to like imagining kind of like the technology that would be kind of popular now, because obviously it's taking place in kind of like a postmodernist like society. And he predicts, first of all, FaceTime, and also like essentially Netflix. So as far as like the FaceTime, like they have obviously like their mobile phone devices, and this book was written in I think 1996, I believe, and they came up with these new video calls, or video phonography, I think is what he calls it. And in it, like people were like super excited to get FaceTime and be able to buy these new devices where they allow you to video call. But over time, people started realizing like shit, I actually gotta pay attention to what they're saying and actually at least look like I care. Just because up until that point, everyone was also obviously like calling on the phone, and David Foster Wallace just pretty much describes how everyone kind of viewed speaking on the phone as like a way just to be heard and to be able to share everything you're thinking, while at the same time not paying attention or being involved with the other person, with what the other person is telling you. And people quickly realized when they were FaceTiming, they they actually had to be at the camera. They couldn't be washing dishes. They couldn't be on the computer. They couldn't be watching a show, reading a book, cleaning up around the house, doing whatever it may be that they would usually be doing while on the phone with someone. And so they started making like these 3D printed like masks that look just like you, that you could place in front of the camera to make it seem like you were there listening while you were going to do the other things that you would usually do while you're on the phone. And this also kind of tied into like the consumerism aspect of it, because obviously there was tiers on how well made these models of people were. And so like the richer you were, like people were able to get like like full sized models of them that like head to toe that you could place to get like a full body view. And it really just like if you think about it, it's that's really how it is now. Like I feel like I remember, like I'm not that old, I'm only 23, but I remember being younger and then being excited to FaceTime people. And now that I'm older, I hate FaceTiming just because obviously like if you get caught at the wrong time, like if you're on the toilet, you're just laying in bed looking like a potato or something, it's just very inconvenient. And it's not that I don't pay attention. I mean, I mean, I won't lie, I will be doing other things while I'm on the phone, but I try to at least be listening. But I think the verdict is like people usually don't prefer to FaceTime. And so it kind of like all ties into like the same thing, where in the book he describes people discovering video telephoning, and people being excited for it, everyone starting to try it, and then just going, and then they end up just going back to regular telephone calls, which is kind of like what I feel like we did. We all got excited with FaceTime. We started FaceTiming each other, and it just kind of fell off. People realized that it was just more inconvenient and not as enjoyable. And so I also went back to regular phone calls. And me, I'm honestly more of a texting type of person. And as far as Netflix, it is a little bit of a spoiler, I'll say, because this was like probably like in the latest chapter I read. So it kind of like gives like a big explanation on a big part of the book. So I kind of don't really want to get too much into it, but pretty much it describes. So I won't say why, but I'll say what happened. So it describes how it went from like cable television, cable TV to like these like cartridges, which are that were like on demand, and you could stream like whatever film, show, sport that you wanted, and how people just stopped caring about cable television, watching cable television, and like all those companies just plummeted, and people were just streaming everything. And so that's pretty much how Netflix that's pretty much what Netflix is. Like everyone, no one watches TV anymore, really. Everyone has Netflix, they have Amazon Prime, whatever it may be, just some type of streaming service. Um, and even like with like shows that were on TV, they're on streaming services now, and people watch on that. So I just like if you think about it, like obviously it doesn't seem that crazy now just because we have it, but I mean, personally, I can't even begin to imagine what type of technology we'll have like 10 years from now. So for Dave Foster Wallace to be able to do that in the 90s is just super insane. Some of like the big things I feel like the book is kind of like essentially about and talks about is just like the insane like pressure of just being a person in the world, like no matter like where you grew up, obviously whatever culture you kind of grew up around kind of idolizes something different, and you grow up like around that and feel just like the pressure to live up to those things, or to like acquire the skills to be able to be in a position where you're desirable, especially like with this being like at a tennis academy. Everyone in there is feeling the pressure to continue to train because they have like an insane like daily regiment as far as like tennis trainings. They just pretty much go to class, train, eat, train, go to class, eat, train, eat, sleep, and just like wanting, maybe not even wanting to live up to that, but just feeling the pressure to live up to those things. And I feel like obviously the tennis thing is just like an analogy for it. It's different for everyone depending on kind of what you grew up around. And besides just that, also like another big thing is that everyone gives themselves up to something. Is something that's been mentioned a couple times in the book now, and how it's just different for everyone, whether it be addiction, sporting ventures, achievements, drugs, sex, trying to look for human connection, just all these different things that, besides like the societal pressure, these are things that you're putting pressure on yourself, or not even putting pressure on yourself, but kind of got sucked into and almost trapped in a sense, and just giving yourself up to that. Like one part of it that really kind of stuck out to me was in one of like the latest chapters I read. And there's a character named Lamont Chu, and he's talking about how he just has like this like burning desire to make it in tennis and to be in like the big show. He just like has like this internal craving for the fame, to be in the magazines, to be playing in front of huge crowds, but he doesn't know why. And so he's kind of confiding in the like their personal like sports guru that just spits out crazy wisdom. And like the guru is telling him like, oh, why do you think that you're craving this attention, craving this fame? And Lamont talks about how he thinks it's because he wants someone to feel about him the way he feels about his favorite players, and he wants to be in the magazines and admired and respected. And the guru is pretty much telling him that those pictures in the magazines are all they are, just magazines. And he asked him like, do you think these players feel the way you think you'll feel? And he pretty much just gives him like a wake up call and tells him those players that are in the magazines are craving what you have right now. Like while you're here craving the attention, craving the respect, craving the pictures in the magazines, they're craving your privacy. They're craving just being able to be a normal person, not having to worry about going anywhere and getting their picture taken, and just being able to live their lives. Like, sure, maybe it feels good, feels cool like the first time they see themselves in the magazine, but after that, just loses its novelty and you just want to be a normal person again. And this can be said for like, let's say, celebrities as well. Like obviously we see all these actors, actresses, athletes everywhere, and getting their pictures taken while they're just with their family or at an event, whatever it may be. And that's why like a lot of like these like famous people, they they almost miss how they could just be a regular person. Like I know one artist that is like Tyler the Creator, for example. Like he'll tell fans that he doesn't want to take pictures because I'm just eating right now. I'm just doing this right now. Like, thanks for listening to my music, but I'm cool in the pictures right now. And people get mad at that. People will hate on that. People will call him like a shitty person for doing that to his fans. But I mean, realistically, like these people like don't owe you that. Like, sure, they're famous, they're popular because you, the listener, are giving them that platform. But at the same time, you have to understand they're just a person as well. And I feel like this just puts it in a different context, so it's more digestible. You can actually understand it a little bit better, and pretty much apply it to like anything like that. So this is what the guru tells them regarding the desire to be in the big show, to be in the magazines. You might consider how escape from a cage might surely require foremost awareness of the fact of the cage. And this reminded me of a quote from Dostoevsky where he says, the best way to keep a prisoner in prison is to not let them be aware that they are in a prison. And it's true. Like, if you don't know you're being trapped by something, that you're stuck on something, you're never going to be able to escape it. So that, I mean, that's why, like, in all like these things, people say like the first step to beating your addiction is to acknowledge that you are addicted. And so yeah, so I just thought that was personally a very moving portion for me. And so back to the drug addiction portion, there's just like this like super like terrifying description of this character going through withdrawal, but it's the way David Foster Wallace like described it. Like, I mean, I think it was just his prose more than anything, but it was almost kind of like beautiful in a sense, but also like terrifying, one, the way it's described, because I mean, fortunately a lot of us aren't going to have to go through that level of intensity when it comes to withdrawal. And just the way that he described it was like so terrifying but also beautifully written, and just gives you like a look into like the other side, because I feel like with most people it's very easy to look at someone that's addicted to drugs, or someone that's homeless or whatever it may be, and just kind of judge them a little bit too harshly just based on it. But describing this, it just gives you so much more empathy for what they're going through, like what it actually feels like to be trapped in an addiction like that deeply. And it just really opens your eyes to that. And another very brutal scene, this scene was actually insanely brutal. It pretty much starts like at the book just keeps jumping back to like these like AA meetings, and there's one character that is describing how she was pregnant but she was addicted to these drugs, and she ends up giving birth to a stillborn. And just like the way the stillborn is described, it's just like it was very heartbreaking and sad. And it was describing like her still, like her like looking at this stillborn like all withered up and deformed and missing all these like appendages and features. She looks at this thing and goes back to loading up her pipe, and just like really shows like the grip like addiction can have on you. And like after this, like she just goes into like this like state of like denial and like almost like psychosis, to where she's like going around like holding this stillborn baby. It's obviously not alive, and just like going around everywhere in town, just like everything's normal. And it took like the smell getting like intolerable for people to notice and kind of report it. And she ended up getting like detained, and then now she ends up at this AA meeting, kind of like talking about her experience. And so just like the descriptions and like just just the descriptions of these events is very like eye opening and heartbreaking. And it just gives you like a new sense of empathy for people that are struggling with that in their day-to-day lives, people that have gone through that, whether they're still in it or if they've beaten it. And so drug addiction and just addiction in general is definitely a big theme in this. Other themes that I feel like are very big in the book consumerism, capitalism, American culture in general. So there's like these two characters that they're pretty much like philosophers, kind of just like spinning back and forth, like on this hilltop. And one of them is like your average, like kind of like patriot type of guy, and the other one is from Canada, I believe, and he's kind of they're just pretty much disputing each other, but like I feel like they're both actually really trying to think about it. And the Patriot character is talking about how like America's great because you have freedom and you can do whatever you want, and there's no one to stop you. And the Canadian character is talking about like, yeah, sure, like it's cool that America has freedom, but you guys are emphasizing too much that you have freedom from X, Y, and Z, as opposed to you have the freedom to do these things that can be more fulfilling and more useful for your life. And that's why he was saying that everyone in America is like pretty much entertaining themselves to death and choosing to be addicted to these things and choosing to participate in X, Y, and Z that can be harmful to them, as opposed to doing things that can be fulfilling to their lives, whether it be working on some type of art, reading, learning, just doing something that's going to be one, more fulfilling for them, and two, beneficial for their country as a whole. But it's not their fault. It's not the people's fault that they don't know they can choose these fulfilling actions over these random addictive tendencies that they fall into, because America is just telling them, oh yeah, you have the freedom to do whatever you want, but they're not teaching them how to choose and what kind of things may be more beneficial to you to choose, rather than just doing whatever bullshit that people do. And just like the entertainment aspect of it is like another really big part of the book. And I feel like the book itself is almost like a commentary on it, just based on the fact that the book takes so long to really like get started, really. And there's just so much like world building and so much information Dave Foster Wallace is just kind of throwing at you, just trying to see if you'll crack, see if you'll continue to read, see if you'll continue to pay attention. And I feel like the first 350 pages of it being so over intellectualized, being so being so overloaded with information, being so seemingly pointless. Like I feel like the Dave Foster Wallace's goal was to try to get you to stop reading, because he's trying to say, hey, like I know you can't pay attention, you're not going to read this, but the people that do continue to read it will be very thoroughly rewarded. And so just like the the fact that no one can pay attention and they're just over entertaining themselves with the cartridges, with the video telephones, with addiction, with whatever it may be. And so I feel like that was like another big part of the book. But I suppose that's everything I had to say so far. Um, oh, one more thing actually. So a character's got introduced, President Gentle, which a lot of people were saying that he's very very similar to like Donald Trump. And there is a line that they're talking about pretty much reinventing the government and history, torching the past, manifesting destiny. And so pretty much they're trying to cover up this event that happened, and they don't want to tell people the truth. And just by them saying kind of like torch the past and reinvent a new future, kind of remind me of like the current like US book ban that's going on. So um interesting connection to say the least. But I'm gonna keep going with this, keep chipping away at it. Hopefully, hopefully within the next month and a half, I could finish this up, and then I'll do the final video, just kind of giving my final thoughts on it, talking about it overall. But really an amazing book so far. I've been really enjoying it. I mean, not to say that it's been total enjoyment, because there's definitely been some sections that were tough reads, tough to get to, very much a slog to get through. But getting through it nonetheless. The parts that are enjoyable are very beautiful, but you almost get kind of angry at some points because you're like, come on. But definitely a challenge. I feel like after finishing this book, I'm gonna have so much. I mean, I already do, honestly, from just getting this far in. Just like so much more confidence in my reading ability and reading comprehension, and just being able to get through something like that. Yeah, it's my reading confidence and be way more leveled up. But next video, I don't know what my next video will be, but those are my thoughts on Infinite Jest so far. Yeah, talk to you guys soon.